Contacto Latino con María Juliana Rivera.
Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos a Contacto Latino con María Juliana Rivera. Hoy les traigo un tema que para mí es muy importante y es acerca de los errores en los certificados de nacimiento acá en los Estados Unidos. Desde el 2014 que llegué a vivir acá a Myrtle Beach y que trabajo con la comunidad hispana, han sido innumerables los casos y las personas que me han llamado. Doña María Juliana, tuvimos la bebé en el hospital de Cómo, en el hospital de Grand Strand, pero mire que pusieron el apellido mal. Yo tengo dos nombres y pusieron mi segundo nombre como si fuera mi apellido, o se equivocaron en el nombre de mi esposo, o también en el país de origen. Él no es de Guatemala, él es de Honduras. ¿Y qué pasa con estos errores en el certificado de nacimiento? Que cuando usted le llega la tarjeta del social, a veces le llega también con otro nombre diferente. Que si usted después va a aplicar para el pasaporte de su hijo, por un solo error de ortografía en los apellidos, ya no concuerda y ahí empieza todo el problema. Y lo segundo es que no es tan fácil, no es que yo voy a ir simplemente al DHEC o al Departamento de Salud y les voy a decir que qué pena, que mire, que aquí está el pasaporte de mi esposo, que aquí está el ID de mi esposo y la matrícula consular mía y el certificado de nacimiento mío, que si por favor me lo corrigen, que es que quedó mal. No puede ser así, no es así de sencillo. Hay que ir a través de la corte, hay que conseguir un abogado y hasta hay que tener un guardián, un tutor durante ese proceso que represente al niño. Por eso fui hasta las oficinas del abogado Russell Hall. Él es el abogado de familia que yo recomiendo y que llevo mucho tiempo trabajando con él, y le pregunté para que nos guíe, para que nos cuente exactamente qué es lo que hay que hacer. Así que los dejo con esta entrevista que hice en días pasados, y si usted tiene cualquier otra duda, no dude en ponerme su nombre por el WhatsApp de Contacto Latino o a través de los comentarios. Suscríbanse para que cada que yo saque un video nuevo con información nueva, pues les llegue el aviso de que hay nueva información. No quiero estar poniéndole tags y estarles escribiendo todo el tiempo que los enloquezca en Facebook o en YouTube o en sus mensajes. Así que la mejor forma es que usted se suscriba y así se van a estar atentos, se van a dar cuenta de cuando haya información nueva acá en Contacto Latino. Bueno, muchas gracias y los dejo con la entrevista.
Contacto Latino con María Juliana Rivera.
So welcome to Contacto Latino.
I'm glad to be here.
And I invite you today because I want to talk about the problems that a lot of Hispanics have with the birth certificates, with the names. So sometimes, because we have two names and two last names, they get confused. Muchas veces, como nosotros tenemos dos nombres y dos apellidos, se confunden y no quedan bien hechos los certificados de nacimiento. So, what we can do and what are the most common mistakes that you have seen in your experience?
Sure, and I think before we start with the common mistakes, I think the first thing these folks need to understand is if they have someone that speaks very good Spanish and very good English, they are with them when they're filling out the paperwork, because that's the key. The DHEC is going to go with the paperwork you give them. So to prevent these mistakes, make sure the child's name's exactly like you want it, and your name, father's name, and the countries of origin are exactly like you want it, and make sure you have someone there that understands English and Spanish very well, and that would prevent the problems we're fixing to discuss.
Okay, and now that you mentioned that, where is exactly that moment that they do it? Because they're doing sometimes when you are previous to your delivery or when it's already like the child has born?
Yes, after the child has been born. They want to make sure the child's been born, so the mom may be under the influence of some drugs that she had during birth. She's certainly tired, exhausted, so she really needs someone there to support her. Make sure that all that's correct. And maybe a thing to do is have that all written out prior to delivery. And speaking with someone like you who speaks good English and good Spanish, maybe have that printed out specifically like you want it, and then you'll have that with you when they're coming in to do that birth certificate.
Don't wait until the last minute.
Yeah, don't wait until the last minute, especially if you have a problem with the English language, because the reality is you have nurses coming in, you have social workers coming in, you have family coming in, and you have people coming in with these birth certificates and it all gets mixed together. So have that ready ahead of time, and that would probably prevent what we're fixing to talk about.
Okay, that's a really good tip. And another thing is, they're not so easy to fix. It's not something that you just go with your passport and say like, hey, can you fix that because they made a mistake? It's not like that. In this country, it doesn't work like that.
That's correct. Well, what you have to do to correct the birth certificate is you have to file an action, a summons and complaint, and ask a judge to correct that for you. So, and that costs you attorney's fees. You're going to pay for a guardian ad litem who represents the interest of the child, and you got to pay the filing fee. And then if you have to serve the other parent. So if you and the other parent aren't getting along well, you're going to have to deal with that aspect of it also. So there's a lot that goes into changing a name once it's on the birth certificate.
Okay, so there is many things that you mentioned there that I want to ask you a little bit further. So what are the most, now let's talk about the mistakes. What are the most typical mistakes that you have seen? You have worked with the Hispanic community here for several years.
Sure. A lot of times the last name, because we have most of the folks working in the hospitals are American and they don't have a Hispanic background, they'll just use one last name. That's probably the most common. Oftentimes they'll get the last names reversed. They'll have the mom's last name first and the dad's last name second, rather than the way it's supposed to be. They'll hyphenate the name because Americans often, when they do two last names, they want to put a hyphen in there. My understanding is in the Hispanic community, that's not correct.
No, we don't use that line in the middle.
Correct. So that's one thing. Sometimes the names are misspelled. We use Z's when you guys use S's. We use S's when you use Z's. So you need to make sure all of that's correct. Make sure. And sometimes it's the way it's written. It may be you may think it's an S, but they may see it as a Z. So even the way you write your letters when you're doing this, you need to make sure that is exactly the way you want it. So those are some of the mistakes. Oftentimes too is they'll not put the parent's name on there correctly. Mm-hmm. And you have to go through the same process. The kid's name could be absolutely like you want it, but your name could be incorrect as the mother, or the father's name could be incorrect. So you have to look at the whole birth certificate, or what you're putting on the birth certificate.
Also the countries.
Sometimes they put the country of origin on the birth certificate. South Carolina doesn't necessarily do that, but I have had to correct some from other states where they will have the country of origin and it's the wrong country. And in fact, I just did one with you, and some folks you brought to me several months ago where they had the wrong country of origin. So that information they're going to have to give them, even if it's not on the birth certificate. Make sure that's correct too. Yeah.
And one other thing is like, maybe at the beginning you think you don't care. Oh, they put it with an S, I'm not going to fix it. But when they want to get the passport, even if it's one letter, that can cause problems.
That's correct. Well, it's a couple things. One, the name, I want to be very clear. The name on the birth certificate in the United States is the name of the child, the legal name of the child. You can call the child whatever you want, but when it comes to documentation, passports, anything, whatever's on that birth certificate, that's the child's name. So you need to make sure that's exactly the way you want it. The additional problems you're going to have is if you're trying to get a passport for the child and your name is misspelled or in the wrong order on their birth certificate, you're not going to be able to do anything with them to get that passport because your name needs to be correct. So you need to one, make sure everything's correct before you put it on the birth certificate, and two, if it's incorrect, you need to get that fixed because as they get older and you start doing things, driver's license, passports,
credit cards,
sports, credit cards,
insurance,
everything. It's going to have to be adjusted at some point. So the quicker you get it done, the better off you are, I believe. So yeah, there's all kinds of issues that you don't think are going to be issues until they are. And when they're younger, it's no big deal. But when people normally find out about it with kids is usually when they're going to get their driver's license. Yeah, because it doesn't just happen to the Hispanic community. It happens to non-Hispanics, to Native American. When I say Native American, folks born here to American parents, they make some mistakes too, and then that needs to be changed also. And they don't find out about it till bingo, they're trying to get a driver's license and they can't.
And they have to go back. So the process will be, we need to get these, they need to bring all the documentations. And what is the process? So you have to file something to the court. How long does it take?
Yeah, the first thing is I want to look at it and make sure I have what you're asking for. So I would need the actual birth certificate. A copy of it's fine. I don't need the original, but I need a copy of the original, and then we'll go through it line by line to make sure everything. Because I think I did one where they were just trying to change the kid's name, but we went through it and something else was wrong.
We find something or mistakes. Yes.
Yeah. So you want to, while you're here, while you're changing it, it doesn't cost you any more to change everything on it. So you might as well just look through it and make sure you have the child's name right, mama's name's right, daddy's name's right, countries of origin's right. Even the parent's birthday was wrong on one of them.
Yes, and that's all of that.
Because in the Hispanic community and in Europe, you folks will put the day first, then the month, then the year. In America, we put the month first, the day second, and then the year. So that, even that gets confusing. So you need to make sure the birth dates for the parents are the way the Americans recognize them.
And if you're going to do that, the first tip that you say that they're going to write it down, name the month. Say February, March, April. Put the whole letters of the month so you don't get in trouble. Nobody can doubt that.
That's right. Do not do it where you just have, for example, we'll just do today's date. In the United States, it's 03/20/2024. In Hispanic countries, it's 20/03/2024. So it's very, it can get confusing. So just put the day first, then spell the month out, and then the year, and that would resolve that problem.
Okay, so then what happened next?
So I would do that, and then we would file the complaint. And the complaint would have jurisdictional questions on it. The children have to be here. You have to live here. I can't do it if you're in North Carolina. You have to be a South Carolina resident. Your children have to be South Carolina residents. So we would file the action, and then we would serve who we need to serve. Now, if mommy and daddy are together in the same household, I usually name them as plaintiffs and then name the children because they're both on board with it. So I'd have that filed, and then we would have to get what's called a guardian ad litem, which represents the interests of the children. And even if you guys are both on board, if you're correcting a birth certificate, you're going to have to have a guardian, and that person says that this name change or this correction of the birth certificate is in the child's best interest. And then once we have the guardian on board, then we request the hearing, make sure everybody's served properly, then we request the hearing, have the hearing, which is it's very non-confrontational as long as everybody's on board. Then I give you your order, and then you will go to DHEC or its equivalent in whatever state the child was born in.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. So that's pretty much, that's a process in a nutshell.
How long does it take? Depending on the times with the court, because I know it's not in your control, the time that they gave you the hearings, but an approximate time?
I like to say it this way. If I filed it today and everybody's on board, probably 60 to 90 days. But you got to understand, I'm busy also. So I'm just saying the day I file it, once I file it, and if everybody's on board and I don't have to wait for someone to answer or anything, 60 to 90 days.
And about the guardian ad litem, is like any process in court that involves a minor, they're going to have a guardian ad litem that it will be the person representing the best interests of the child.
I don't want to say almost every. If you have an agreement for custody or something, you don't need a guardian. If contested custody, adoptions, name changes, birth certificate corrections, all that, yes, you do need a guardian. So most things with children, you need a guardian.
Okay, and another thing that is important that you told me before is that even if you had a child and it was born, and you have the birth certificate because it was born in Louisiana, in North Carolina, but you're living here in South Carolina and you find that there is a mistake, you can start the process here. You can do the process here.
Yeah, the whole process would be the same as I mentioned before. The only difference would be once you have the order, you would have to mail it to or physically go to the office, the equivalent to DHEC in that particular state. You don't get a new birth certificate in South Carolina if the
South
child was born in Louisiana or North Carolina. You have to go back there, but they'll recognize the South Carolina order as long as it's certified, which I do that for you. As long as it's certified, they'll recognize that, and they can use that to change the birth certificate in those other states, but not other countries, just the other states.
Yes, so that's very important that you don't have to go to that place or stay there to do all these changes. You can do it from here. Okay, thank you very much for being with us and explain to us a little bit more of these things that happen with all immigrants here, and that we really need the help that people that knows, no go and ask anybody else to tell you that they can fix it, and the truth is that they can't.
Right. I do a lot of name changes, a lot of adoptions, and I do work with the Hispanic community a lot. And if I don't know how to do something, I'm just going to say I don't know how to do it, or I'll try to figure it out. But with respect to name changes and birth certificate corrections, I'm fairly comfortable doing all of that if they need help with that.
Okay, thank you again for being in Contacto Latino con María Juliana Rivera.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Contacto Latino con María Juliana Rivera.